How is this working?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
I barely hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah. Oh, there you go, yeah.
So you're gonna have to hold this fairly close to your faces, and I don't know how well those are working. So you may.
I can adjust that. Want it up like there?
Well, no.
You know, husband and wife?
No.
Okay, we have the great pleasure to have two more of these community conversations this spring. And one is gonna be in 2 weeks, and then one is gonna be in 4 weeks. So, the one in 4 weeks, I'll give you that right now, is George Penn from Wyuta, Wisconsin United to Amend. It's about overturning Citizens United, which has allowed the overflow of dark money into politics and has its corrupting influence on our elected representatives. So that's what we're gonna do in a month. In 2 weeks, Steve Hogsett has a group called Health Done Right, and he has a HEAT, which stands for Healthy Environment Action Team, which he's on, and he has developed a program to present to you in 2 weeks, which will be April 22nd, and I'll send you an email about that. So you know about these two presentations. But I want Steve to talk to you about the county's Environmental Services Department, which is headed by Chase Cummings, who will do the presentation. And they'll be at the Rosbach Museum, as we only have this, this building once a month. So, Steve?
Sure. Thanks, Lorene. Yeah, as Lorene mentioned, I'm sure you're all familiar with Health Done Right. It's KT Gallagher was instrumental in getting that going, one of the key people. And out of that came 5 independent teams to make Dunn County a healthier community. And one of those groups is a Healthy Environmental Action Team. Steve Hansen in the back of the room is a member of that. Sandy White is a member. Are there any others?
Not that one, but.
Yeah, you're involved in another Health Done Right. Great. Very, thank you for everybody who is helping support that in some way. But I just want to talk a little bit about this upcoming program. The pandemic really kind of set us back. We wanted to get more community involvement, and interaction, and collaboration. And so we have been trying to do that. We've been struggling quite some because of the pandemic. But one of the events that we are going to have that evolved from one of our recent meetings is Chase Cummings is the conservationist for Dunn County, land and water conservation. And he is a member of our HEAT team, Healthy Environmental Action Team. And so Chase agreed to give a presentation. And during the meeting, I said, well, a good place would be community conversations here in the library. So I talked with Lorene, and as Lorene just mentioned, the library is not always available. So we went to a Plan B. We wanted to get this in the spring yet. Went to Plan B, talked with the Rosbach Museum, and so it's going to be held at the Rosbach Museum 2 weeks from today at 10 a.m. And there will be communications. Lorene will send communications. We're going to use Menominee Minute. We have 3, 4, 5 different ways we can communicate this. So if you get an email, you may want to spread the word to your friends as well. And it's a chance for people to learn about what the Dunn County Land and Conservation Group does. And, and it just so happened that it was Earth Day that this is going to be held. So what a better springboard to have this, that wasn't by design, that was just by schedule. So we're going to kind of make that a little bit of a footnote, Earth Day event, and collaboration between Health Done Right, namely the the HEAT team is part of Health Done Right, Community Conversations. So I just gave a paper to the front desk here at the library and asked them to put it up. We're going to start communicating that, and we hope you can make it. Thank you.
Okay, now we are going to talk about this topic of the housing crisis, and I have 4 wonderful people that will be talking to you about their expertise. And I think we'll let you be last, Mike. This is my husband, Mike Brandt. And then we have our Mayor Knack, and we have Padraig Gallagher, and we have Vince Haig. So we're very, very appreciative that you all came to speak with us, and we'll see which microphones work the best, and we may have to pass this one around. So
They're all hooked in.
they're hooked in, but they didn't seem to, well, we'll see how well they work. We'll see how well they work. And Mike is hard of hearing, so he may ask people to repeat what they say. And when you ask questions, maybe repeat what those questions are as you're answering them when we ask questions later. Okay, we'll start right now with
Testing,
Padraig.
does that
If you
work?
want to take the lead, Padraig, I'll have Padraig sit right here.
And then we'll just go on down. You can sit in the last chair, Mike.
Test 1, 2.
Everybody can hear me? Excellent. Thank you for being here for this important discussion. This is certainly a crucial topic right now in this community and a lot of communities here in the area. The reason I'm here as Executive Director of Stepping Stones of Dunn County is to speak to an area of need which might be a little bit unique, but is very related to the other topics that will be spoken about here, having to do with housing. Stepping Stones of Dunn County has been operating the only general population emergency shelter for folks experiencing homelessness in Dunn County since the mid-90s. And the program has grown significantly along with the need and thankfully the support of the community. But what I want to do is just kind of describe the situation of the people in need that we are seeing and describe what our program currently is, the ways that it's changing, and maybe give you a better understanding of parts of your community that you might not see unless you're really looking for it. So let's start at the state level. Sometimes numbers convey things that tug at the heart, and I think this is one of them. For every 100 low-income households in the state of Wisconsin, there are only 36 units of affordable housing. That is a state fact as far as the level of income that people can spend and the cost of housing being above 30%. So almost 2/3 of folks who are low income have to spend more than 30% of their take-home pay on just basic shelter. And this is a problem that's not getting better. It's in fact trending the other way. Now here in Dunn County, as the only general population emergency shelter, we have seen the shelter nights that we provide to folks that are struggling with homelessness go from 4,500 shelter nights in 2019. So a shelter night is, you can think about it as the number of times a head hits a pillow, right? So our program provided 4,500 shelter nights in 2019. In 2022, we provided just shy of 11,000 shelter nights. So we've more than doubled the service that we provide to the community in these very short, albeit troubling years that we've had between 2019 and now. What's even more striking about that is that we've never met even half of the need that's presented to us. So we've had wait lists always that are longer, more households on those wait lists, and the number of households that we actually have in shelter. So there is some significant need in the community right now. And to give you a better understanding of the folks who are seeking assistance, of those 11,000 shelter nights we provided last year, 58%, a clear majority, went to people whose last established residence was in the city of Menominee. Oftentimes when folks hear about somebody who's struggling with homelessness, there's an image and a kind of a backstory that they think of somebody who's passing through, right? Somebody from somewhere else and they're heading somewhere else. These aren't members of our community. This is somebody else. It's easy to other that way and to not really understand that these are your neighbors. In every sense, they used to be your neighbor, and in most senses, they still are your neighbor. 2/3 of the folks that we provide shelter to are from Dunn County. And of the 1/3 that are from outside of Dunn County, the vast majority of those are from areas immediately around Dunn County. So Sojourner House in Eau Claire, they have overflow. We have a lot of people from Eau Claire County, from Barron, from Chippewa, that kind of round that last number up. This understanding of people struggling with homelessness as being from elsewhere is really one that I want to push back on. These are community members. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing that I want to make clear as I'm describing the numbers with our program is that right now we have 5 shelter apartments, and we try to focus on couples and families that we put into those units. And we've had some limited in time, but pretty extensive as far as the generosity of the government grants to put people up in hotels. Those are sunsetting here at the end of the year. And we are putting about 20 households during the cold months up in hotels right now. Those grants are not budgeted for 2024. Now, that's what brings me to our description of how our services are going to change moving forward. We're currently building a new shelter focusing on individual adults struggling with homelessness. It's going to be a 20-bed facility. It's going to allow us to meet the numbers at the highest level that we've had in shelter over the past 2 years, but we're going to be able to do it year-round. And instead of people being isolated in hotels, they're going to be in with us, with services, with case management, and we're going to be looking for area partners to bring services to the shelter, to the people. It's going to be a 24-hour facility, so folks aren't just pouring out into the community in the morning. As soon as they come in, a clock is going to start. We're going to have a to-do list, and we're going to work with them to get to a better situation. And this is going to be a useful tool for the community. But it's not without controversy, and one of the things that I'd like to touch on right now in this forum is the way that a community reacts to a shelter coming to the community. There is always some degree of not in my backyard that happens. And I want to just bring up some of the common misconceptions and pushbacks that people give, and I want to respond to them in kind. One is the thought, if you build it, they will come. If you build a shelter, folks are going to come and they're going to fill it up. Well, I just described to you the numbers that indicate those people, wonderful community members, are already here and they will fill it up. But people don't choose to be homeless or struggle with homelessness just because a shelter is available, right? That's not the way it works. And so if you hear those sorts of objections, I hope you're able to, kind of share that reasoning behind it. Another pushback is oftentimes that property values will decline in the area immediately around a shelter. And there have been studies by the Urban Institute, among others, that show that if a shelter offers services and 24/7, is open 24/7, property values do not decline in the area immediately around there. Similarly, the objection of crime going up. Studies have shown if it's a 24-hour facility with services that welcome people and help them get to a better position, the only crime statistically that goes up is community on guest crime, not the other way around. So when you think about the need that's in the community, when you think about the ways that you can work to help bring housing up to levels that need to be there, I want you to think about the safety net, stepping stones, the people that are falling to us, right? Falling through affordable rentals and affordable home ownership programs, transitional housing that come to our services. And I want you to keep them in mind because they are absolutely your community members also. Thank you.
Lorraine? Oh, there's a question. Patrick?
I was wondering, do you see some purpose in collaborating with Habitat, essentially the next level?
Yes, in a broader community cooperation, absolutely. But oftentimes what Habitat for Humanity needs is a level of income to be able to, oftentimes their programs are focused on folks who can afford housing, but instead of a rental, they're getting their own home by, through the sweat equity program and through those sorts of models. Oftentimes the people that fall to an emergency shelter have got some work to do to get to the point where they can do that. Yeah.
Lorraine, who would you like to have speak
Oh,
next?
just keep going down the line.
Okay.
Vince will be next.
Oh, there's another question. Go ahead.
When you said the only crime that increases is community to guest, did you mean like a community member committing a crime to a guest staff?
Statistically, and I can get you the study, but statistically the only level of crime, and this was an extensive study in 5, I believe, shelters in the Denver area, but it wasn't just inner city, it was more rural also parts of the city. The only level of crime that increased statistically was community members' crime against guests of the shelter. It wasn't the guests of the shelter committing crimes in the community. Yeah.
Is there any other questions for Padre? Vince, I think you're next in line.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Vince Haig. I own some mobile home parks in the area. And so I deal with low-income people quite a bit, in fact, most of them, but not all of them. I have some people who are doing quite well within my parks also. The parks I have 155 tenants, and I own.
I think this might work better.
Oh, really? Good.
We can't hear you.
Just gotta hold it close to your mouth.
Closer.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, hold it closer then. Hold it closer so we can hear you.
This is tough. Anyway, I have 155 tenants, and it's an interesting mix because I get to see a wide variety of tenants. About a third of my tenants are retired folks like yourselves. About a third of them are young married women. Almost all young married women. There are a couple young married men, young unmarried women. They're women that have children, but they can't afford apartments because 3-bedroom apartments are too darned expensive, and when the kids get to be 8 or 9 years old, you need to split them. That's quite obvious. And so they're looking for 3-bedroom houses, and the option that's available is a mobile home, because most mobile homes have 3 bedrooms. There are exceptions, and most mobile homes rent for a lower value, at least I rent them for a lower value than what they would pay for apartments. Generally about 75 or 80% of the cost of an apartment. Okay. And so I get a share of those folks, and they're good tenants. Most are working, quite hard. They have very busy lives because they have children to take care of, and some of them have parents to take care of too, because we all know who takes care of the old folks, don't we? It's the young folks. And so there's that, and the other third is married people who have chosen to live in mobile homes for whatever reason. And many of those might have an older child with them, they might not. But they're between the ages of 30 and 60 or 65. So that's how they divide up. Income-wise, I have some very poor people in my parks, and I have some people that aren't so poor. People that drive pretty darn nice cars, nicer cars than I drive, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, but you're cheap.
The mayor doesn't pay me well, that's the problem. Anyway, so it's quite a diverse group of people. And I was a bit befuddled. I didn't know what you meant by affordable housing, but I think I'm understanding the idea better. And I think it's a good approach, because there are different problems to solve. But the problems you have in a mobile home park are very wide, and they're not well focused. The problem we have with buying mobile homes is they become very expensive compared to what they used to be. And there are several reasons for that. Number one reason is in 2000 the feds passed a code which said that you had to build better mobile homes. The mobile homes that they build today are essentially to the same standard that lower cost conventional housing is built. 6-inch walls, thermal-pane windows, and all the good things that those folks enjoy. And so that costs money. Also, everybody's greedy. We all know that. That's how our system works. And the manufacturers are greedy, and the dealers are greedy, and everybody's greedy. So that pushes the cost up. Right now, in order to buy a new mobile home and set it on a lot in a mobile home park, you're going to have to spend about 90 grand. That's a lot of money. And there just aren't many people that can afford that want to buy mobile homes. The other problem we've had is financing in the past 20 years. That problem is being resolved. We now have some national and regional lenders who are lending on mobile homes, and there's even one lender in town who will lend on a mobile home, although the terms aren't great. It's rather difficult. You have to borrow money from that lender, but their rates are competitive. The single biggest reason is mobile homes in parks don't qualify for FHA financing. You can't get government guaranteed financing on a mobile home yet. I think that day may be coming, I don't know when. But if that comes, that will help a great deal. The interest rate on a new mobile home right now, with a reasonable down payment, will be in the neighborhood of 9–9.5%. For a regular house, for a conventional house, it's going to cost you 6.5% or 7% for that same loan. That makes the payment a lot bigger for somebody who doesn't have the money. And another big reason is they don't, generally a lot of the people that want to buy this lower cost housing don't have down payments. That's because they don't know much about saving money for a down payment. They don't understand the game. And therein lies a lot of our problem is the game. Because we have that game, and it's rules that we currently have. I don't know how you can change those. You're going to have to work within them. And it's going to have, I think, going to have to be by area. So those are the problems. Is it going to get better? Oh, it's always going to get better, isn't it? Always. And it will. Because as it gets worse, there's going to be more demand politically for it to get better. I believe that. I think we're on the edge of some big changes in this country, right on the cusp, and I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be a difficult trip, though, but it'll happen. So, that's where we're at right now. How do you affect what's, the future? Boy, I don't know. I really don't. So that I think is where we're at. That's as I see it. So, thank you.
Good job. All right, well, good morning, everybody. Oh, afternoon, good afternoon. Okay, so it's wake-up time. So I want you all to be thinking here about what is affordable housing? What really is affordable housing? Affordable housing to John is $500,000 house, no problem, you know? And $500,000 to, or affordable housing to Robin might be, you know, surf culture with a friend. Sorry, Robin. But there are basically three types of affordable housing, or three types of housing. You either have surf culture with a friend, sleeping in your truck or your van, which, you know, a lot of people do. There's renting a place, or there's home owning, or owning a place. So you've got, you own your place, you rent your place, or you don't have a place and you make do with what that is. So you can go and buy a house, and you know, what's the cheapest house you can buy? I bet, unless you're getting into a mobile home, like Vince said, 100,000. I bet if you go to buy a house that's livable, you're looking at a couple 100,000, 160, maybe 200,000, 300,000. Now you're paying interest on that investment of 300,000, plus you got utilities, plus you've got a water bill, and you've got insurance. And so by the time you get all done, is a $300,000 home affordable for most people? Not typically, unless you've got you know, a high-paying job, a government job, a banker's job, something along those lines. So what we've been looking at is, in the city of Menominee, we started a couple different things. One is we've got a project going on right now within the city of Menominee. I've been working on it for about 5 years, a little longer than that. But what we're looking at doing is setting up a small home village, not a tiny home village. And this is not a village for the homeless. This is the village that's going to be designed for those individuals that have a job, or a couple that has a job. And what we're kind of trying to center this around is probably about a $60,000 cost for a small, super small home. Does not have a basement, does not have a garage, highly insulated, highly energy efficient. And what we'd like to have happen is these individuals go out and they go down to John's office and they say, hey John, I need a $60,000 loan. And John says, well, you've got a job and your husband's got a job. I think we can make that happen. And yeah, we can give you a heck of a deal on interest, and over 8 years, their payoff is $684 a month, or depending on, you know, what the amortization rate is. But a $60,000 loan for most couples is affordable. I consider it affordable. So what we're looking at doing in the city of Menominee, and we've been working on this for about 5 years, we've got 3 or 4 different locations that we've been working on trying to place this small home village, because we need amenities like sewer, water, you know, gas lines, electricity, and so forth that are readily available. But we do have a couple of locations available that we're looking at, and I'm hoping to launch it this year. But what we ran into problems with is I started looking at the possibility of having a co-op or a co-op ownership of this. That didn't work. Then I looked at, well, the city of Menominee is just going to do this, and we're going to manage this, and my administrator just shook his head at me and said, no, Mayor, that's not going to work. It's like, okay. So recently, a few months back, the city decided that we had a couple of lots available that we thought would be great to donate to Habitat for Humanity. So while one of the head guys was here from Habitat for Humanity, I said, here's a program that I'd like to instigate, and would you be interested as a Habitat for Humanity operating and managing this site? And he says, you know, give me more details. So I laid it all out for him. He says, absolutely, that'd be right up, you know, our alley. So the idea is the city would put the infrastructure in, buy the land or own the land, put the water, the sewer, the streets in, and then hand it off to Habitat for Humanity to manage a affordable home village style living. We're looking at 8 modular style homes. You pick from one of those 8, unless there's already one there that you're going to move into. And of course small, you know, 600 square feet, 800 square feet, 1,000 square feet, depending on if it's a 60, 80, or $100,000 range, depending on your loan, you know, what you can get. But what we're looking at doing is those payments would be $684. You'd have, you know, the utilities and such on top of that. But after 8 years, you got that paid off, and you get your money back when you sell it back to the conglomerate. So it's not like paying rent, which I understand, you know, sometimes people are forced to pay rent because they're living maybe 6 months or a year, and they might be moving into a different location, or they've got a job that requires them to stay and pay rent until they can afford to buy a house. But here, this would be what I would consider affordable housing, because you would be able to, after 8 years, you make your payments, you'd be able to capitalize on all that equity and get it back. And we're looking at possibly a 3% inflationary rate every year, but they'd have to sell that property back to the conglomerate. In this case would be Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity is able to buy windows at cost, and appliances at cost, and your heating and air conditioning and all that kind of things. So we probably have an off-site area for them to park if they wanted to park underneath the lean-to. Probably a little storage area attached to that, and probably like a community center built in. So there's overflow. Because if you have a guest, or at Christmas time you have guests coming in, or the camaraderie of the complex also. So that's one of the projects we're working on. It's been about 5 years in the making so far, and we're hoping to launch this summer if it works out. What the city was really able to do this last go-around is we closed one of our TID districts down, which is a tax increment district, and instead of giving those tax dollars off to the school district, the county, the tech school, and also the city, we were able to capitalize a one-time tax initiative into affordable housing. So, and it was our biggest TID. It was out in Industrial Park. We closed that down, and so those tax increment dollars came into what we call affordable housing, an account. So we've captured $1.7 million into an affordable housing account now. So it really gives us Menominee the availability or the financing to move forward on this concept. So we're hoping that this summer we can pull the plug and make this all happen. So I've been working with Habitat for Humanity, been working with the city. We just have a new public works director. Dave Schofield took over for Randy Eide. So there's been some change in leadership there, and he's amazing. And also, another change that we just took on is our city administrator, Lowell Prangy, after 35 years, just retired. And Chief Eric Atkinson, our police chief, raise your hand, chief, right there. He is going to be the new city administrator. So the funny thing is, it's going to be hard to break myself of calling him chief. So I just got to say, hey, you, Eric, what do we got? What do we got going today? So we've been meeting, and he's been picking up the ropes from Lowell. So we've got a lot of changes at City Hall that are happening. But I'm working with an incredible group of people. Our city council people are amazing. The leadership in all the areas of our city, the Parks Department, the rec department, the Park Department, the Public Works Department, the Water Department, the Sewer Department. These are all incredible, amazing people. So if you get a chance, say thank you to them. But those are the people that makes my job easier, and it allows me to do something like this affordable home and this kind of a project. We also have Home Sweet Menominee, which is something that when you buy a new home in Menominee, or a new used home in Menominee, the city of Menominee will, and their partners, because we partnered with the school district, 3M, Cardinal Glass, Anderson Windows, and some others. If you work for one of those organizations, you can get $10,000 gap financing towards your home. And we filled 47 of those in the last 3 years since it started. So that's an amazing program. And so it's called Home Sweet Menominee. So if you know anybody that works for an entity that's involved in the program, and we're looking for other entities to be involved also, but it's good for those entities because they can say, you know what, you're working for us and you're looking for a new home, you're eligible for $10,000 gap financing for that home. And sometimes that's all it takes to fill the gap, to make it a possibility. So what is affordable home housing? Is it sleeping on your couch, going into a small home village and have some ownership, or is it renting, and where in some cases you paying $1,400, $1,600 a month? Unlike Vince's, one of his mobile home parks, which you're a really nice guy and you make things super affordable for living. So give them more.
Give more.
And it's true. When I met my girlfriend, now wife, she was living in Double B Trailer Court up in North Menominee, and there's a lot of how many sites do you have altogether? 150.
192.
192 sites that fills a big gap in what we need for housing. And then we're building also. There's another development going in right now. It's called Estover Development, and sometimes you look at these developments, and I'm not 100% on board with a lot of the developments that happen because I don't see them as being necessarily affordable. Because if it's an apartment complex, they're getting their $1,400 a month. and it's not money they're ever gonna get back. So I don't consider affordable housing having to pay an exorbitant amount of rental fee. I look at other ways that we can do this. What we're going to do is in this affordable home complex, a small home, I call it small home, not tiny home development, we want it to be a show and tell development because we want others to see what we're doing and we want to let them know if we can do it, they can do it. So we're looking at this as a strong candidate for affordable housing in Menominee. And I know the county's on board to look at other affordable housing projects. I want to thank Padre for his efforts. Putting this shelter together with 20 more beds is huge. And when he came to the city and said, "City, would you sponsor this? Because we need a municipality to sponsor it." I talked to Lowell, our administrator, and said, "Oh my gosh, Mayor, it's going to be a lot of work." And I said, "I know, but if you're willing to do the work, Lowell, I'll back you on it." And Lowell picked up the reins and ran with it and got $1.4 million, I believe, from the state of Wisconsin to help with that shelter. So it's kind of a unified effort, not just the city is standing on its own, but Padre coming to the city and working together to make things happen. It's totally, it's way cool. Another thing, just before, I'm going to skip topic matter just for a moment on affordable housing. And I want to tell you something else that Menominee's doing that's way incredible, and that's called Project Hope. Bring it to his eyes. So methamphetamine, it's the worst. How many people know people that have been involved or know people somehow that's been connected to methamphetamine? It's the worst of the worst. It's worse than anything I've ever seen. I've lost friends to meth, and I've had employees that have been on meth. I put up people in houses on meth. Meth is awful. Drug addiction in general is just, it's a bad thing. I think the statistics in Menominee, it was upwards, I don't know if it's 80%, but near 80% of all of our crime is related to meth in Menominee, Wisconsin. It's not going through a red light, it's not, it's not the shoplifter, but the criminals, the crime level, the theft, and those kinds of things is related to meth. And so when the chief came on, 10 years, chief? Pretty close? About 10 years ago, the chief and I had a closed-door session, and I said, these are my goals. And the chief has just leaps and bounds met all the goals that I assigned to him. Community-based policing, good cops out there serving the public, which is outstanding. And then took meth, the Project Hope, and named it Project Hope and made it happen. We are now at the cusp of having all the counties surrounding Dunn County and being involved in Project Hope. We're out talking to them. We just did a Zoom session with across the nation, day before yesterday, regarding methamphetamine and drug addiction and announcing Project Hope and what it does and how it works. And we are so close to getting it to a state level where once we get the state level involved in the system of what we call Project Hope, it's evidence-based policing and helping people that have addictions. And it's setting a new paradigm in drug addiction. It's reaching out to people that need help, and the chief has done a phenomenal job. And once we get it to a state level, we hope that we can take it nationally. If we can get it national, it started here in Menominee, Wisconsin. So I'm so proud of the chief, and it's so good to be here. Menominee is amazing. So if you love Menominee, be involved in Menominee. And affordable housing, I know that's a topic matter, and I skipped topic matter a little bit, but I'm passionate. Yes, Lorraine.
What is the housing development that you were talking about? I missed the name of that.
Well, we have two. The one is called Estover, and Estover is a rather large development. It's going to be south of the old police station, between 17th, I believe, and Highway J. And it's great to have housing and so forth. The only concern of mine is that, again, most of it's 12 flexes, 8 flexes, 4 flexes. There is some single family. We made them put single families into the development agreement so that we had that covered. And then there's the other one too, across the way that's going to be built on the hill next to the middle school. What's that one called? It's more multifamily again. But it's geared more towards the elderly or veterans and such, so there's some financing to help those individuals. So we've got two major, I think 155 units or something like that going in, but again, what we need, in my opinion, is more affordable housing, and that's the direction I'm trying to lean towards. We have the funding, we have the means and the mechanism to get it done this year, so I'm hoping that this is the year to make a solid effort towards affordable housing in Amity. So with that, I'll just, I don't want to ramble on too long, I gotta save an hour and a half for Mike to speak. So, is there any questions? Do you have any questions? Yes, Sandy?
Yeah, well, I have some concerns,
Okay.
because now that the city has moved into subsidizing some of these housing developments, which has been new, because when I was on the council, we never did that. But there is that development down by the stadium. Now we've got the 155 unit going up across from Oaklawn, and I don't know, I don't think you subsidize the Estover, but when you put those in a TIF, and they have up to 20 years to pay that back before it goes on to the tax roll. That's an issue for us in the city of Menominee with an aging population, those of us who are paying our taxes and everything, and you've got, what, maybe only 4,500 individuals paying, or properties paying taxes in the city. That means then we take on, I think, a greater burden. And for those of us who are retiring, we're aging, that's an issue. Is there any discussion in that realm?
Well, part of that theory I argue with you, and you and I can argue pretty well together. But here's how the TIF district really works: is those tax dollars that are being collected from those entities are coming directly to the city and not being shared with the county, the school district, and tech college. So those tax dollars that come back from that development pays itself back, but without tax incentives, it wouldn't be there. It wouldn't go there. So it's kind of like, well, a lot of the other communities that I know would just, I mean, where they would die for a development like this. I mean, they love these things that just give some housing, and it's how should I say it? It's in the eye of the beholder, or those that can afford to live in those places. Some people don't want to own a house. They don't want to care for a house. They have a job at mental health, and they just want to go home and pay their rent, and they're good with that. And that's good. That's good. And I understand elderly or aging population. I think what we should have is more high-rise, maybe apartment complexes, more like the Tantera apartments, which is quite affordable. And that would be a great remedy also. But again, you need land, and you need a contractor, and you need a conglomerate to take that on that isn't willing, that isn't all about greed and making a ton of money. You know, that's, like Vince said, that's a big part of it. Now, you mentioned the living across from the stadium. That's filled with students primarily, and it's actually, and yes, we gave them some incentive to be there, but it wasn't all that much, and that money does come back to the taxpayer because it all comes back to the entity that's funding that tax increment venue, that district. TID district stands for Tax Increment District, and it's the same as a TIF district, which is a tax increment finance. It's one and the same, two different acronyms. But we have found, okay, here's a point of fact. If we wouldn't have had a TID district in the industrial park, out towards Anderson Windows, Cardinal Glass, 3M, if we wouldn't have had a TID district in place and gave those businesses incentives to be there, they wouldn't be there. And look at the jobs they offer. We had $100 million in growth in those areas in 10 years. Since I got here, 10 years or 12 years, but 10 years, in the last 10 years, we had $100 million worth of growth. That is unbelievable. The jobs that it comes, the taxes from $100 million is amazing. So if you look at the broad spectrum, and if you're not sold on TID districts or TIF districts, then you're really not, then you're ill-informed. Because what you really need to do is look at what those tax increment districts do for a city. It's huge.
But just so I think maybe it would help people understand if I'm right, so the key point if you're a community person is that TIFs aren't taking tax money away that's already present. It's doing something with those additional dollars that business does in the future. So I think that's important people understand that we're not taking money away from today's tax roll. I don't know if everybody
Yeah,
understands that.
well, and what it is, it's almost like paying forward for taxes coming back to you. So in other words, yes, if you don't do anything, there's a neutral, you're not gonna get any more taxes. You're just gonna stay
Same tax
flat.
rates.
Yep, same forever. Now, if you build something there, over the next 20 years, they pay into, all the tax money comes directly to you and offsets any incentives that you get. Now, yes, if we give somebody $300,000, say, but the increment value is 30 million, well, that $300,000 gets eaten up pretty fast. But sometimes it's just that $300,000, $400,000 that you give to somebody to incentivize them to be here. It says, yeah, we like working with you because you're helping us do this. And so then we don't mind giving you the $30 million worth of tax revenue in the future to make it offset. So, I mean, it's proof in the pudding. If you really wanted to look at the industrial park and what's going on out there, without tax increment district or a TIF district, it wouldn't happen. We did the cobblestone downtown. That was a tax. We gave them, I can't remember the exact numbers. I think it was 500. I think Robin, you were on it. Was it $500,000, $400,000? That was before you. I think it was $400,000 to help with that. And that being said, we did make some modification that said, okay, we're going to give you the $400,000, but we don't want vinyl siding. We don't want just an ugly hotel downtown. We want it to be classy. We want rock. We want a facade that looks like it belongs and it's nice. So, yeah, we gave them $400,000, but we also got our way a little bit. So, that being said, we've done that. You know, they have to sign a developer's agreement. They have to be, there's a lot of rules that go into that. In some of these areas where the two developments are, they're called PUDs. It's a planned unit development. So that being said, they could have went in there and they could have just done it, and we wouldn't have been able to say, oh, but we have to have some single-family homes with that, by the way. And also, we need this done and that done. We want trails, we want sidewalks, we want streetlights, we want curb and gutter. If we didn't offer some of those incentives and did a planned unit development, then those things, we don't have control over that. They can just build whatever they want and, you know, tough be it. Yes?
I have a question.
Yes.
So will those developments also focus on accessibility in addition to affordability?
Well, the one across from the middle school, that is designed with, they're going to have solar panels and high efficiency building. They're all high efficiency now, but this one is going a little over and above with accessibility and elderly accessibility and veterans accessibility. And there's some payback, some programs that they involve themselves with to make it more affordable for that clientele. Now the other one is the 8-plexes and 12-plexes. It's a little different level. They've got some steps and they've got different things that don't quite equate to accessibility. So one does more so, the other not so much.
Then my next question is for those that do, is there sort of a sign-up list or
Yes.
how would people express their interest?
Okay,
Just
yes.
find out if they're eligible, because I'm assuming there are some eligibility issues, if you say veterans and, you know.
I think you have to be over 55 and you have to be a veteran. And then, yes, once they get up and running, I don't know the exact details, but you just have to contact the developer or the management company and then, you know, get your name on a waiting list. But I know that there's a lot of, being there putting solar panel pods out there, and they're also putting, oh my goodness sakes, there's a small, anytime that developments happen nowadays, if we're involved in a TIF district, if the city gives them money, we encourage them to not only put sidewalks in, but we encourage them to be high efficiency along with parks and recreational areas. There has to be a certain amount of green space. They just can't build lay out a big chunk of concrete and just build a big structure on it. That doesn't cut it. So there's a certain amount of rules and regulations, especially if the city gives them money. We can dictate some of those rules, so there's a plus to that. Yes?
The extremes of wealth have created extremes of poverty. So what programs have you set in motion to deal with extremes of wealth?
Well, me, not quite so many programs from the mayor's perspective, but I oversee or I watch other people put these programs together, and I think Stepping Stones has done an extreme job, a great job with that. I know one of the the $10,000 that the city gives to new homeowners, that kind of helps with that also. But you're absolutely right. You're right. Extreme poverty or extreme wealth does create more people without the money besides. And I think you'd be great on some of our boards to help us with some of that, because we need help. And we need volunteers across the board, and it's wonderful to see all these people here. And I don't have all the answers for all your question, but that's a great question. And I might just pass that question along to Mike or Padre or Vince, but you're right, and that's a great question. And so the city of Menominee itself, we don't initiate a lot of those programs, but we oversee. Sometimes we make money available for some of those programs. We work closely with the dog shelter, Humane Society, for picking up the stray animals. There's the Mabel Tainer gets subsidies. There's different individuals, the Stepping Stones get a subsidy from the city. So we might not oversee the program or start the program, but sometimes we help to fund some of those programs that are already in existence, the Boys and Girls Clubs, for instance, and things of that nature. So, yes, Sandy.
Just one last thing. First of all, I'm all in favor of TIDS, number one, especially for business and industry. When they can, and one thing I was concerned about is when I was on the council, they were only at that time giving out like $12 an hour jobs. Now that's changed. Now it's gotten so competitive. And so that the salaries that some of these business and industries are giving out is making it better for some of these individuals to afford some of the housing. But what I would like to challenge the city on is we need to look beyond just the city limits. We need to have collaborations with our townships, with the state, so that, and I'm challenging Eric to do that, so that we can make this, I don't like how the way that we tax things in the state of Wisconsin. We've got to make some changes, because it's not working for each little individual town to be a separate entity, and only for what you can do with just those tax dollars, etc. So I would like to see us form more collaborative partnerships in the future, not only with the contractors, but the state and with our surrounding townships. So I just put that out there.
Sure, just to touch on that real quick, and then I'll hand the microphone over to Mike. But we do meet quarterly with all the townships, or especially the ones surrounding Menominee, Wisconsin. So, Canaan Township, Town of Menominee, and so forth and so on. So we do meet on a regular basis. We do have a map of the surrounding area of Menominee and what kind of goes where and how to accomplish that with the towns. So we are in contact with the towns in the city of Menominee. So there is that cohesion. The county right now is working on a housing plan, and the city sits on that housing committee also. And so the county we have a new county administrator, and I think she's knocking it out of the park. She's doing an amazing job, and she's really involved, and she's really bringing things to the forefront. So if you've got anything that's really of interest, Sandy, you might want to talk to Chris Corpola out at the new county administrator. She is doing outstanding. So if our administrator from the city does half as good as she's doing, we're going to be great. So you're welcome, Chief. So, any other questions? I'll turn to Michael. Yes, go ahead.
Again, back to Habitat in Manny. How many units was that you're working with them?
Well, we'd like to try to get 100 units in. I know that the first year we're looking at probably about 20, maybe. If we get 10, if we get 1 in this year, we did something. But we're trying to gain 100 unit piece. Now that's going to be not only probably this piece of land, but another piece of land. But we think that we have the funding sources available that we can in the future do these 100 pieces. And that's just the infrastructure portion.
And that's the modular type build.
That would be on a floating heated slab, a modular 6, 8-inch walls, whatever it is, high efficiency. That's correct.
Where will they start?
Well, we don't have we have 4 different locations that we've been looking at, and I'm not at liberty to tell you where those are at yet because we're still working on the water, sewer, and all those things. But as soon as we get a little bit closer, I'll present this to the city council. The city council knows I'm working on it, but they don't know all of the elements of it yet because I don't have it all put together. But it was a huge, huge help for Habitat for Humanity to come forward and say, yeah, we're interested, Mayor. Now we're a little bit in discussion with like some of the other suppliers, like maybe if Anderson Windows would come on board and we could call it Anderson Park or something like that, if they would get on board. So we're working with Cardinal Glass Anderson Windows and some of the local, bigger conglomerates, yes.
I apologize, I still have a question.
No, that's okay.
When you say high efficiency, is that building code plus, or is that a specific standard you're looking for?
Building code plus,
Plus,
exactly, yes.
Energy store? What's-
Well, I don't know about the energy store part, but what we'd like to do is initiate some solar panels and other things. And you know what, the other thing is solar panels recently have really gotten more efficient. The Rossback Museum is putting in solar bank, and the city funded some of that. And their solar panels that they're getting are 3 times as more efficient than they were a couple years ago. So, hopefully not by the time we get this, but soon, when we get these things going, the efficiency level should be outstanding. So I'm hoping for the best. Yes?
Just a quick question. Will you have a place, any of these places for people who are younger than 55 or who are for some reason challenged physically? I mean, are you going to have a place for them?
Well, that's a tough question. These homes will be built on one level, and some of them, I think, we will probably put in that handicap accessibility aspect. So that's a great point, and that's something that I'll add to the discussion when we open up this small home village. That's a great point. Thank you. Yeah, and it's not made for just anybody of any age. I mean, you could be 18 years old, and you got a job, and you can afford it, you can be there. You can be 75 years old, and if you can move into our small home village, then the doors are open, and we want you to come and welcome. And in that home village, we're looking at a community center area, some storage, off-premise, maybe a lean-to style. All the lawn mowing's done for you, everything else is done for you. If you decide to stay there after you pay your home off, there's probably a fee that you're going to pay into the homeowners association thing of a couple $100 a month or whatever. But there's a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces to this that we're working on. So, yes.
Don't forget the storm shelter.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
Just real quick, so these small homes, do they build equity over that time so the person can resell?
Absolutely. Yep, the equity you get back after you pay the loan off is yours, but you have to sell back to the conglomerate, and we're trying to work in a 3% inflationary increase with that dollar amount.
Okay.
So there's some, so yeah, basically, you get that $60,000 equity back if that's what it cost you, plus your 3% increase. And hopefully you can move on to the $150,000 home, and then the $300,000 home, and then the $500,000 home that John lives in. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're right in the front row.
I don't sit here.
John and I sang barbershoppers for a couple of years, and he's got a tremendous voice. You can't believe anything he says, but boy, he's got a tremendous
Next
voice.
panelist.
Any last questions? All right. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I am. I'm curious too about more options for, larger families. I just spoke with a woman who's got 6 kids and was really struggling to find an affordable, healthy, safe place to live.
I know, and these homes are small, but we're trying to gauge them so there's a $60,000, $80,000, and $100,000 range. So if you get into a $100,000 small home, it's going to be pretty sizable, and something like that could be affordable for somebody with 6 kids, I would think. An option.
How many bedrooms is that?
Well, I'm not sure. Whatever $100,000 gets you.
Yeah.
So, thank you. All right.
Yeah,
All right,
let's
thank
pass it over to
you.
Mike.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I don't know.
Oh,
Thank you, Rand. I'm going to speak to you very differently than Michael. And I have to look you in the eye because I want to see if you're spitting at me or anything. And, it's public speaking, you got to know what to.
Microphone.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak to you as kind of an immigrant into your town. I came here 15, 16 years ago. I grew up in southern Wisconsin, went to Madison to school, went to Iowa to work in industry, decided I didn't like what I was seeing, and my brother and I bought a side of a mountain in New York State, upstate in the mountains, and built a ski area. And my life was spent building a ski area, got angry with government, ran for mayor and got it. So I ran 3 terms as a mayor, town of 27, 28,000 people. Very small board, only 5, so it was a very different kind of government than what you have here. The mayor was the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, so I got to learn a whole lot of things. I came here as an immigrant to the United States in 1938, and my first memory is getting off a ship in New York Harbor. That's my first memory in life, and seeing these hundreds and hundreds of people on this dock next to this enormous ship. I saw people digging trenches in my youth, hundreds of men digging trenches for the WPA. We were near Boston and Waltham, where my father got a job. We moved to southern Wisconsin because my father and mother didn't like Boston. They happened to be Protestant Swiss, and they didn't like the Catholic hierarchy in Boston. And grew up on a farm. From that perspective, let me tell you what's caught me here. First of all, this housing study was commissioned by the county. The county has held hearings. This guy put me on it for some reason, but so I went to all the hearings. And the hearings are interesting because when you look at our town right here, community, 50% of your homes are 80 years old or more. 80 years ago, you know what electrical systems look like? You know what plumbing systems look like? You know what insulation systems look like? You have a lot of old homes yet that are in bad shape. They're a rental property, and your state has made it very difficult for your inspector to go in there and say that they need fixing. But it's time we as a nation look at the heating problems. I met a guy who rented one of these, and his heating bill was, what, $800 for a month, or was it $900? In other words, they're very inefficient. And as a nation, we can't stand that. So we need to be able to use that efficiency by going to our utilities and say, what homes are in this bad a shape? And then we need to start an industry to fix those homes. You've got a window company here, you've got 3M here, you've got a school that teaches the trades. Put them together and start an effort where you go into one of these homes after another, take it out of the market, buy it, whatever you gotta do, rebuild it and put it back in the market. And do one after another until you get these homes in shape. That's an outsider's view. When you listen to what people say we need, well, we need homeless. My God, we do need that. When I look at this nation, I've watched a change when the Supreme Court decided Citizens United. And they gave this nation to the ultra-wealthy to run, and they're running it. Whether you like it or not, it's fact. What you're going to do about it's not my problem anymore, because I'm 88. It's your problem. But you better damn well do something about it. Because you don't have a voice in state government. You don't have a voice in federal government. And you need one. Until you get one, you don't have a democracy. That's just a bunch of BS. So, what is the net result of that? The net result is, I went to work in industry in 1956. When I was in college, I worked in union jobs, and when I look at what I was getting paid then, today it would be about, and I was a kid, I was working, I was getting paid what today would be about $28 an hour. See what's happened to wages? That's happened because the ultra-wealthy have been allowed to make monopolies and control labor prices. And so now here you sit. What am I going to do about providing housing for people who can't afford housing? That's a problem. And if it keeps going, the houses are going to have to get smaller and smaller. like it or lump it, that's life. You got a beautiful situation with this housing question. Look at your community and redesign it. You're doing it, not me, but I'm telling you, you got an opportunity. The county started this, so I went to the county and talked to some certain people. And I said, wait a minute, I've done some development. You want a really nice, high-density development? Look at your, what do you call that thing?
Rec department. The rec.
Your fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds.
Your fairgrounds, you've got electricity, you've got all the utilities there. You've already solved the drainage problems. You've got a nice set of hills where kids slide, you've got all kinds of lawn in there. Knock down all that other crap, leave the skating rink, and then put some really high density development. You've got access to, immediate access to biking all over from there you go all over the industrial park. From there you go down Main Street, you're into downtown. From downtown you can be on all of the other trails that we have. You're next to the playgrounds, you're next to the school, you're next to a health facility that's very important for older people. You've got Quick Trip that's already selling food. You've got a restaurant right there. You could make a beautiful high-density development. Problem with high-density developments is that they're condominium. Condominium means you jointly own things. Condominiums have a great big problem. The joint ownership requires an association. And the associations invariably run very high costs and become top-heavy. And there's a lot of litigation against them. Where you have the situation that's out here, all the things that you want are already provided by the community. You don't need anything much more than lawn care, et cetera, that type of thing. So you could be minimal for what's community owned. You have another thing to look at while you're planning this community. There's a sand plant, and they've been mining for quite a while. Now they got to reclaim land. You need to incorporate that. You need to think about that. You still have beautiful sites that are part of the industrial park that could be part of this. You really need to look at the whole plan and figure out what's best for your community. And you got a wonderful opportunity to do it. That's basically it. One thing you've got to do when you do housing today, water and sewer have to go with the city. You've got to do it. Small systems don't work. They're not environmentally smart. You want sewer and water in a city system. That's it. Blank. Tie that into your plan. But get involved. Make a plan. Another question, get government tamed down on what it demands of the developer. Allow high density. Don't waste land. Where you have utilities, get density. Then it works. Don't have a lot of green space where you have your utilities. Put that out where you don't have utilities. Get approval processes that move. Nobody wants change. I don't care what you're going to do. There's a neighbor that doesn't want it. So how much voice are you going to give them? I've been through so many public hearings and hearing that crap. I mean, really, change is the universal thing. It's going to happen all our lives. Accommodate it. Move it fast. Don't make it expensive. Because when you do, you're making the housing expensive. That's my wisdom. Good luck.
What, got a question?
My Mike just reminded me of it. We watched Lester Holt, and on his show, they've done, no one mentioned this. We have, except greed, corporations have gone in cities and bought up housing. And then they rent it out to regular people. And so on this show, they would show the young family wanting to buy a house that they couldn't afford it. But because these corporations have come in and bought these houses and are now renting them at ridiculous rental rates. So, I mean, why does the United States of America let corporations come in and do that and take what American dream was, owning your own house if you wanted to? Now these people who want to own their own house can't because they can't even get into it.
Cheryl, let me answer that. It's a very interesting question because it has a real answer. It happened with the Federal Reserve System. I'm reading a book about it right now. Congress quit working because of money in politics. The heavy money in politics goes after anybody that doesn't have their agenda. And their agenda's tight. We don't have global warming, so get over that. That's part of their agenda. It just doesn't exist. Their agenda is they want to lower wages. They control. And since you can't get anything done in Congress, then the Fed decided to feed money into the system to solve problems. And they've done this and done this and done this, and then the pandemic hit and they had to do it some more. And now you've got so much money in the system that rich people have so much money they don't know what the hell to do with it. So they buy real estate. And they shove the price of real estate higher and higher. And you probably are going to see a major collapse in our economic system because of that. That's what the Federal Reserve is fighting right now. That's the big arguments. How are they going to pull that money out of the system without collapsing our economy? I don't know the answer, that's for sure. I hope they find it. But one thing that's wrong is our political system on the national level is not working. Nobody can get together and solve problems. So you've got this terrible banking situation, which is exactly what, as you said, it's also the cost of, the banks are buying their own, the corporations are buying their own stock, which includes banks and corporations. And it's a really crazy economy. And it's gonna get because Powell has said it's gonna get better. So I suspect they're gonna pull money out, and so we're in for, some big changes.
I have a question. I'm an architect, so I have some expertise to offer. I've heard about projects being developed in the community. I would be super excited to participate, share expertise. I have, let's say, friends and colleagues who have expertise. So how would we get involved to sort of bring projects like that forward with the resources we have in the community?
I'd say...
Sorry, as a side note, just in my professional community, I realize that sometimes the rural areas are forgotten. We look at big cities, we look at the coastlines and create a story. But then things are happening differently in rural communities. And Menai is sort of an interesting in-between, right? Like it drives through a little bit. So it has potential and it has possibilities. And a lot of good people in the community that can contribute. So I would be like, how do we?
You know what? Local government's the only government where you have a voice.
I'm
Local
a
and
person,
county.
maybe not, I don't want to step into politics. I want to.
No, I'm saying a voice. You don't have to be a member of a political party to have a voice. You need to speak up. And I'm telling you, you got a chance to re-examine what you're doing here with your community. So you need a community base to do that. Don't ask the city to do it for you. Get a group together and start talking. and come to the communities and say, we want a voice in this. We wanted to help, you know, for instance, I went to the county and certain leaders and said, well, how about this fairground? And this guy said to me, you can't touch the fairground, it belongs to the county. The county said, ooh, yeah, that damn thing's worth a lot of money, which does nothing for us but pollute. You know, you look at the aerial pollution and the noise pollution that comes out of that thing every Friday, my God.
Oh, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday sometimes.
Yeah, and way into the night.
And in April, when the school's still going.
But the county is willing to sell it. One of the things that has come up in these hearings is that 3M has said, we have a problem. We can't bring executives to find homes in our community. So here's a place where you can do it. You can put some really nice development, and you're gonna have to find other developers to come in here to do that kind of development and do a good, tight, maybe it's 3-story, whatever it is. I'm not into that, but you're gonna have to probably go to the cities to find those kind of people. And design something, you can do stuff for older people, you can do it for young executives that have a family. That would all work. Think big, do it.
Just one question. Some people want to know where they can go to help now. Like, where can they sign up
Well,
to be drafted into this?
we want help. The city wants advice. I know that for a fact because we don't have all the answers. And the more brains that we can put on this, an architect would be amazing. You know, start looking at, you know, where can we find people that'll put up modular homes? And how do we make the connection with, okay, you're gonna do this modular home, but the windows are gonna come from X, and you're gonna work through Habitat for Humanity. So the mayor's door is always open. Here's my card. I have more cards if anybody would like to be involved in more city stuff. Please, please, please reach out to me and the city. And Eric is our new administrator. Eric's gonna be, he's totally on board to do good things for the city. He has in the past, and he's gonna be a dynamic person to work with. So absolutely appreciate all the help we can get.
I'd like to say too that we do have the Housing Action Team, which is part of the Health Done Right. We have been on hiatus for what, a year? While the housing study was completed, we haven't been meeting, but that group is concerned citizens, people working in the community, and it came out directly out of the study of our own community asking what do we need in our community to support our community health. And unlike some communities, housing rose enough to the top that it actually became a working team. So we spent several years really exercising our brains as to what are the problems that are confronting us for lack of affordable housing in particular. And then we were able to get a grant and paid for a pretty extensive housing study, which I think was referenced by you. And we are now going to be doing sort of an executive summary and coming back together. I think next week is our first meeting. And then we will probably start meeting again on a monthly basis. As maybe it might be every other month. We haven't decided that yet. But the goal of this is really to move the needle forward for our community. And people from the community are welcome. I can give you my business card, or Julie, if you've got your cards on you. Saturday, I don't know, do I have a business card? I think I have business cards. But we will be getting back going again. And yeah, the Health Done Right has its own website, and I think there's a contact us page, and Caitlin Ingley is managing that, and she'll do a great job getting back to you. So there are places for people to put their energy and attention on this really important issue that affects all of us. Very briefly, since we've told a lot of stories today, I work for University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. We have our own offices in the Dunn County Government Services. We are part of your community. We live here, we work here, we serve our community. And we just hired a new staff person from Eau Claire, and she cannot find a place to live here, and she's going mental about it. I mean, you could tell it's really eating her up inside. She can't find anything that she can afford. And I don't want to lose her because she's an excellent staff member, but this is what happens to employers, right? You get somebody, they're like, yes, I want the job. And they're like, move the family there. Oh wait, we can't find any housing stock. So we do have a serious problem, and it's like, to me, it's like it's like throwing up a sea drag behind you in a sailboat where you're just hauling water and all your brakes go screeching on. It's like that in our community because it impacts every piece of our community's life. And I know that this is an intractable, as they call, a wicked problem. If it was easy to solve, the United States would have already solved it. We definitely are gonna need community willpower to make some changes happen. So I really appreciate that people came out on a beautiful Saturday, like our first really nice one Saturday in a while. But I'll fish out some business cards, and Julie, I don't know if you have any. Julie Bendel from the Community Foundation of Dunn County. The two of us have worked in the housing action team for several years. I don't know, COVID messed up my whole sense of what are years and when did we start, I don't know. It's been a while.
Do you know what you're gonna be organizing around, or is that what you're trying to figure out when you look at your housing study?
Right, we are at a balancing point now where we had to wait to get the actual information. Now we have the actual information, and I think it's gonna point us in several directions at once, because there are gaps in housing, which I don't think we necessarily knew that we had, some of the housing stock gaps. I'm not great with statistics, so I have to go back and relook at that. It's pretty hefty document. Did anybody here attend any of those housing forums where they shared the results? So we're gonna try and get that big pile of information down to human being bite-sized pieces. And I think that will give us a little bit of our marching orders. I wish I knew the answer to that.
Yeah.
I think we're past all the complaint stage, which we had for the first 3 years. And actually, the League of Women Voters in 2015 or 16 had already launched a study group on this, and we sort of combined forces because we were all studying the same thing.
Yeah.
But boy, did we hear the complaints.
Okay.
Yeah, the complaints and concern part is now, like, we know that, and then it's the what are the action steps.
No, it's a golden opportunity to look at your own community and mold it, change it, do it with what you have, change it to what you want. And it's wide open. You got a good government, you got people you've got a hearing going, you got a process going. You got to get organized now and say we want to be involved and we want to give input. And that's the best of communities.
I think this has been a great discussion.
Yes.
I thank everybody for their input. And I don't disagree with you, Mike, that we got to do this as a community. And I think we can do, there's something else we have to do in parallel. I think I have a good flavor for the people who are in this room today. I think they would agree with me. But on a national level, there is a serious oppression that is limiting us as people from moving forward. Yes, we have to keep doing things in the community, but unless we wake up as a society, we're in deep trouble as a nation. And one thing we have to do is, this isn't a political meeting, but really it is. We have to get out and vote, and we've got to get these rascals out of our way. They are destroying this nation.
Absolutely.
But that same group says, I am part of the destruction of this nation. And I take offense to that. We got to get politically involved too.
You know what? This whole idea of getting together for community conversation started over at Citizens United. And that's your problem. That's still your problem. You got to amend the Constitution, and that takes a lot of work, and everybody's got to get with it. And that means every time somebody runs for office, say, are you willing to stand up for an amendment against Citizens United? And demand it. It's your vote. It's time to assert yourselves.
And that leads us to our program that we're going to have in 1 month, which is about Citizens United. So I appreciate you all coming, and I think, yes, ma'am.
I'm so sorry. I just feel like we have a lot of the right people in the room right now, and like to your point of what you were saying, like I don't want to lose this momentum, and I feel like we are on the cusp of something. I actually live in River Falls, and I work with Grassroots Organizing Western Wisconsin, and I'm heading up a housing campaign in River Falls. We're just getting into it. We listened to our community, and housing was the #1 thing. We actually knocked on doors in Spring Valley, Ellsworth, and River Falls, and had over 1,000 doors we knocked on, had over 300 conversations with folks. Housing was the #1 thing that came up. Ben spoke with community leaders in River Falls, and they all agreed, yes, housing. And now, I was just in a call yesterday with it, and there's like this coalition starting between the health departments and the hospitals and like all these major players in the area who are very concerned about housing. And it sounds like we have one here in this room as well. And like, how do we all work together and combine our resources, you know, and expertise, even just as neighboring communities, you know?
Would you like me to share email addresses for this group? That we could have a further discussion on the internet?
What do you guys think? I don't know.
Anytime communities can work together on a great project, it gets bigger and better. And that's, Menominee, anything that we do, we'd like to have a show and tell, so we can show you what we did, how we did it,
Right.
and here's the format, and go do it again.
And this, our grassroots organization is like in Menominee. My supervisor, does anyone know Bill Hogsa? Yeah, he's my supervisor. So he lives here in Menominee. His wife owns, or works for co-op. Yeah. So we are like 7 counties now. It was Pierce County grassroots organizing, and now it's Western Wisconsin grassroots organizing. So it's all about the power of the people, you know, to make the change that the people want to see, building power within the community. It sounds like that's a lot of what's going on here already, you know, with a lot of different groups, so.
There's power when we get together. You know,
Yeah.
we share
Something
what
to
works.
that. River Falls has a beautiful eco-village, a Habitat for Humanity project. I don't know where it is at yet, at this point, but a few years ago, I did field trips with students to that eco-village.
Cool.
And it was sort of starting as a collaboration with the university, and then migrated, similar like you were describing, migrated out of, let's say, the academia into Habitat. And it's very vital, so it would be a nice field trip. Yeah. You know, in terms of learning from each other.
Could I share a story about the youth in the recent election? Huh? I'd like to share an observation. So I've been here 5 years in Menominee, going on 5. And there's a group of guys I meet with coffee on a regular basis. I go down, they meet every day except weekends. I go down about 3 days a week, and we invariably will get into some pretty heady discussions. And we had the election that we just had. We got talking about the referendum. 3 referendum questions in the state. And there was a lot of confusion in our little group on those referendum questions. We talked about it quite a bit. And the consensus of our group was no, no, no on how to vote on those referendum questions. And, well, as you all know, the yes, yes, yes is won. And there was I looked at all the election results late Tuesday night, like midnight. I looked at all the city wards and the townships. And there was one ward, Ward 5. At the time, it was late at night, all right, it was late at night. And I didn't go and find out where Ward 5 was. But they voted for Janet 7-1. So I was telling the guys at coffee the next morning, and one of the guys, he gets on his phone and he hands me the phone, he says, here's where Ward 5 is. It's students. Then that night when I got home, that day when I got home, I happened to look at that same ward for the referendum questions. And those kids voted like we old men. They were mainly no. They were mainly no's. The rest of the city and the county were mainly yeses. And that really inspired me for some hope for the future, showing that those kids get it. So I just thought I'd share that.
I was just gonna say, the reason probably for that is because we have some great social scientists at the UW that were bringing those issues into their classroom for discussion. I will tell you, I worked the wards 1 and 2 up at the Christ Lutheran all day that day. There was so much confusion, and we can't respond to the questions. Nobody even knew about some of those referendum questions. There had been no prior education or community discussions, I think, enough to help educate our community on the pros and cons of those, issues. And so, when people initially read them, our wards 1 and 2 voted yeses, the majority were yeses. And I think it was because of pure confusion.
You're absolutely right.
Well, the way they were constructed though was for a yes vote.
Yeah, that's so
When
true.
people don't know, they're in there and they
Right.
don't know, well, yes sounds good, better than no,
Yeah.
right? Just psychological.
Yeah.
Gotta go to myvote.org and look up your ballot before you vote, and then go research those ballot questions.
Okay, in the back, we got a question in the back.
Hi,
So sad.
so I work with Wisconsin Milkweed Alliance, which runs Monarch House Cure Run Respite and Kaleidoscope Drop-In Center here in Menominee. I also recently started with Northwest Connections as a mobile crisis worker. With both of those entities, there are some, one of the things I believe is important is advocate for the people that are not represented in this room, that don't fill out the surveys, the people working third shift, the homeless, people that, want housing, may not be in an emergency shelter situation, but do not have the credit score or the background to be able to be, approved by a landlord or to get a mortgage. And these are, we get calls on our warm line all the time of people just being like, I can't get someplace to live here. I don't have an address, so I can't even get a job here. I'm stuck. They're couch surfing. I have people that are calling our respite, scheduling out every 3 months so that they can come stay with us every 90 days. Because they just, they've just found a rotating way to live. They may be on Social Security, so they have very limited income, but they may also have mental health issues or other, maybe a criminal background that's preventing them from being able to find a place. So I just want to bring these issues up because I'm hearing a lot of things about, get a loan or just, get an apartment. It's really hard here. I currently live in the student housing area with my family because when we moved to Menominee 2 years ago, there was nothing else available within our price range. So it's really hard. I've heard about the mother that has the kids trying to find a place. It's near impossible to find housing in the area unless something happens to open up. So I'm glad there's a lot of these other initiatives going on. There's just some populations I don't see represented and that need to kind of be addressed.
If it makes you feel any better, we did have many populations at the beginning of the Housing Action Team, which was part of Health Done Right, including people fresh out of jail, people who had never been able to rent and had no credit history at all, and people who were either homeless or recently homeless. And we did have people who were, going through trying to recover from drug addiction and the difficulties that come after that. There's a housing first movement in this country and in other countries. I encourage you guys to Google it. Housing first, if you take care of housing, then things like, anything that the public health department is concerned about and that we all should be concerned about, it's much easier to deal with when you have a safe, secure roof over your head and a foundation under your feet. Anybody who went to college and studied Maslow's hierarchy of needs understands that you do not do your best intellectual work when you are scared, cold, dirty, and not sure where you're gonna be tomorrow night. And that's a lot of our kids in high school right now. They're not sure where they are tomorrow. And how do we expect them to improve their test scores?
Okay, Audrey.
I'd like to dovetail off of what you both have said in that, I opened up talking about our emergency shelter program at Stepping Stones and the people that we serve, very similar populations. And something that I noticed with the results from the housing study and a lot of the conversations here are focusing on housing that will only help the people that we serve through a trickle-down model, right? If we build more affordable housing for people that can afford rent, well, that'll reduce the competition for the student rentals. Those prices won't be quite so high, they won't get dozens of applicants, maybe they'll only get a dozen. They'll start considering people with poorer credit or maybe some criminal background, mental health struggles, addiction struggles, right? Now that model, given the overall capitalist model that we're working under, seems to be the one that makes sense, because it doesn't make sense oftentimes, as far as profits are concerned, to build for those who can afford it least. I understand why we're focusing on the trickle down, but we should actually look also at building for people that are in these situations, and not just we scrambled to get together an emergency shelter grant, which I'm so thankful for the city that helped us do that. But that's a one in decades kind of a situation. We need to have intentional design and plans and efforts to actually do those sorts of projects longer term and more consistently.
With that, I completely agree with that. I think that it's also important to note that I personally believe that if you live and work in an area, that you should be able to afford to live comfortably in that area. So, you know, rent prices I see just kind of skyrocketing. They're slightly lowering a little bit right now, but they're staying pretty high to where people, I know, you know, some college students that on the weekends they go work in Minnesota because they can make more money and then they come back during the week. And that we have a lot of, you know, help wanted signs up around town, but we're not offering the wages that would keep people working here.
Okay, well, we should probably wrap this up, because we're getting, you know, we're closing the library in 20 minutes. But I appreciate everybody coming and giving your input and being so concerned about those that have so little that they can't find housing, and we want to solve those problems.
I challenge the mayor, can you continue, Mayor and Eric, can you continue this conversation with maybe some strategic planning sessions and invite community members who are interested to participate in that and get engaged, so that we can really have a well-rounded discussion and identify all those specific needs, and then see how we move forward in a problem-solving arena.
I think we're poised to do that with the housing action team, and there's, we're at the county
Okay.
to do that, to digest that housing study. And
When I know more, I will share more, but right now, like Julie said, you know, we're working through the county, we're working through the
Okay.
city, and we don't have all the dots on all the i's yet.
I'd like to make one comment. I think you need to know, I think you need to realize this is part of the process. The problem is going to get solved one way or the other. This is just the process. And it will happen, and it will get angry. It's not going to be fun, folks. Before this is done, there's going to be some blood on the streets. It really will be. It's coming.
We all agree it would be really easy.
You know what, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you.
And if you have any questions or want to make contacts with our speakers, you can go ahead. When I write an email to you, you can write me back and let me know your questions or concerns.